Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the Baghdad Battery. Did ancient Mesopotamians discover electricity? Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1936, workers near the village of Khuyut Rabbou'a, south of Baghdad, unearthed a small clay jar unlike anything that had been catalogued before. Inside was a copper cylinder, an iron rod sealed with asphalt, and traces of what appeared to be an acidic substance. German archaeologist Wilhelm König examined the find and made a claim that electrified the academic world. This was a 2,000-year-old electric battery. If König was right, the discovery of electrochemical power predated Alessandro Volta's invention of the modern battery in 1800 by 2 full millennia. Voltage generation in the ancient world would mean the entire accepted timeline of electrical science was wrong. It would mean the Parthians of Mesopotamia understood a principle that Europeans would not rediscover for nearly 2,000 years. But proving it has proved difficult. No wires have been found. No sockets, no circuitry, no lamps. Replicas work. They genuinely produce electric current when filled with an acidic liquid. What they cannot produce is evidence of what that current was used for. The Baghdad Battery is real. Its function remains one of the most intriguing unsolved questions in the archaeology of the ancient world. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Out-of-place artifacts, objects found in geological or archaeological contexts that predate their supposed invention, represent one of the most contentious categories in all of science. The scientific establishment's response to such discoveries has historically fallen into two camps. The first is skeptical investigation, careful re-examination of the dating, the context, and the object itself, which often reveals a mundane explanation. The second, rarer response is acknowledgement, a formal revision of the assumed timeline in light of evidence that cannot be explained away. Both responses have legitimate roles. The history of archaeology includes many cases where enthusiastic amateur discoveries of supposedly ancient anomalies turned out to be forgeries, misidentified natural formations, or artifacts simply displaced from their original layer by post-depositional disturbance. Critical scrutiny of extraordinary claims is not closed-mindedness. It is scientific responsibility, but it must be applied consistently. The same rigorous scrutiny applied to anomalous claims must also be applied to the mainstream assumptions those claims challenge. And sometimes, when the evidence is examined honestly, the mainstream assumption is the one that breaks. The significance of genuine out-of-place artifacts goes beyond the objects themselves. Each one represents a data point in a larger argument about ancient human capability, about what our ancestors understood, what they could engineer, and how much of that knowledge has been lost. The ancient world was not populated by primitive minds in primitive bodies. The brains that looked up at the night sky 40,000 years ago were neurologically identical to ours. Given sufficient time and motivation, they could have discovered and lost almost anything we know today. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Baghdad Battery, did ancient Mesopotamians discover electricity, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The artifact was discovered in 1936 at Khuyut Rabbou'a, approximately 13 kilometers southeast of Baghdad, during railway construction. The clay jar measures approximately 13 centimeters tall and contains a copper sheet cylinder roughly 9 centimeters long, enclosing an iron rod sealed with asphalt at both ends. The surrounding ceramic style indicates a date within the Parthian period, spanning 250 BC to 224 AD, though precise dating within this range has not been established. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered German archaeologist Wilhelm König, then director of the Baghdad Museum, published the electrochemical battery theory in 1940, proposing the vessel generated small electric currents. American engineer Willard Gray built a replica the same year and filled it with grape juice as an acidic electrolyte, generating approximately 2 volts of electricity. This demonstration confirmed that the design is chemically capable of producing electric current, regardless of whether ancient makers intended that use. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The jar's construction mirrors that of a galvanic cell. The copper cylinder acts as one electrode, the iron rod as another, and any acidic liquid, grape juice, vinegar, or citric acid, functions as the electrolyte. Similar vessels containing iron and copper elements have been found at Seleucia on the Tigris, suggesting the design was not unique to Khuyut Rabbou'a. Multiple such vessels could theoretically be connected in series to increase the output voltage. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, several similar clay vessels have been excavated at Seleucia on the Tigris, the former capital of the Seleucid and Parthian empires near modern Baghdad. These vessels share the copper and iron internal structure of the Baghdad Battery, but were catalogued as storage containers. Their presence at a major urban center raises the possibility of a standardized purpose, though no definitive archaeological context linking any of them to electrical use has been established. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Smithsonian Institution conducted replica tests in 1999, confirming that vessels built to the Baghdad Battery specifications reliably generate electric current when filled with an acidic electrolyte. Voltages measured in replica tests range from half a volt to approximately 2 volts, depending on the electrolyte used. The Smithsonian's assessment was that while the device functions as a battery, no conclusive archaeological evidence connects it to any known ancient electrical application. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The Mythbusters television series tested the Baghdad Battery hypothesis in 2005, constructing multiple replicas and connecting them in series to determine whether sufficient current could be generated for practical electroplating. The team confirmed the replicas produced measurable voltage and achieved a rudimentary electroplating result. However, the current produced was extremely small and inconsistent, raising questions about whether it could reliably plate objects to a commercially useful standard in ancient workshop conditions. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Baghdad Battery. Did ancient Mesopotamians discover electricity? This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that König's electrochemical battery theory holds that the devices were used for electroplating gold onto silver objects, a process requiring a small sustained electric current. Researcher Arne Egebrecht claimed in the 1970s to have electroplated a statuette using a replica battery and grape juice electrolyte, producing a thin gold deposit. The primary objection is that all known gold-plated artifacts from the Parthian period can be explained by fire gilding, which requires no electricity whatsoever. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that König himself proposed an alternative explanation. The sealed clay vessels might have stored sacred papyrus scrolls or other documents, with the asphalt seal providing protection against moisture and insects. This is consistent with the Parthian practice of storing valued documents in sealed ceramic containers. Critics note that the internal copper and iron components are entirely unnecessary for document preservation and represent significant material complexity with no obvious storage function. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that a third hypothesis proposes the vessels generated mild electric currents for medical pain relief, in a manner analogous to modern transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. Small electrical charges applied to the skin are known to reduce pain signals, and ancient practitioners may have discovered this empirically. The objection is that no medical texts from the Parthian period describe electrical treatments, and no medical context has been identified at any site where similar vessels were found. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree, that is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Baghdad Battery, did ancient Mesopotamians discover electricity, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes Gray's 1940 replica demonstrated that a vessel built to the Baghdad Battery's specifications generates approximately 2 volts of electricity when filled with grape juice or vinegar as an electrolyte. This result has been independently replicated dozens of times by researchers, students, and broadcasters since 1940. The electrochemical principle is not disputed. The geometry and materials are sufficient to produce a working galvanic cell. What remains unproven is that the ancient makers were aware of or deliberately exploited this property. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. Arne Egebrecht, former director of the Roma and Pelagius Museum in Hildesheim, claimed in a 1970s television documentary to have electroplated a silver statuette with gold using a replica battery and grape juice electrolyte. The claim attracted significant popular attention, but was never peer-reviewed or independently verified, and the statuette has never been formally presented for scientific examination. The claim remains influential in popular accounts, but is considered unsubstantiated by mainstream archaeologists. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed no wiring, terminal connections, or secondary electrical components have been found in association with any Baghdad Battery vessel or at any Parthian archaeological site. Electroplating requires a circuit connecting the power source to the object being plated, components that would likely survive in the archaeological record. The absence of any such infrastructure is the most compelling argument against the battery theory, leading mainstream archaeology to treat the vessels as storage containers with an unusual but functionless internal construction. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Baghdad Battery. Did ancient Mesopotamians discover electricity? Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past, with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Baghdad Battery remains one of the most debated artifacts in the archaeology of ancient technology. The Smithsonian's 1999 replica tests confirmed the electrochemical capability, and the Mythbusters replication in 2005 brought the question to a global audience. Despite decades of research, no unambiguously electroplated artifact from the Parthian period has been identified that cannot equally be explained by fire gilding. Mainstream archaeology's current consensus treats the vessels as storage containers, most likely for organic materials. The question of whether the Parthians discovered electrochemistry accidentally or intentionally remains genuinely open. If similar vessels found at Seleucia are analyzed with modern residue detection techniques, they may yet yield direct evidence of an acidic electrolyte, which would substantially strengthen the battery hypothesis. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Baghdad Battery. Did ancient Mesopotamians discover electricity? From the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Baghdad Battery ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.